We're recording, both YouTube and on Zoom.
You all set, Mary Jo?
We're all set, yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Let's go ahead and call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Mary Jo, can you please call the roll?
Ron Van Kirk,
Here.
Kathy Pucci,
Here.
Andy Selhertz.
Here.
All right, very good. Well, this will be the, give me 1 second, please. Computer's running kind of slow today for some reason. Come on. My board docs is not wanting to come up for me.
If you'd like, Ron, while you're signing in, we can work on the approval of the minutes.
Yep. I got it. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's going real slow. Right. Yeah. So the first item we have is the minutes from our last meeting dated May 10th. Are there any comments or questions on that?
Motion to approve.
Second.
To approve the minutes, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Now we're rolling. All right. So the first item we have is a notification, and that is the $50,000 CDB Community Development Supplemental Grant for the Exterior Home Repair and Bathroom Addition Program. And of course, this is the grant that we match the funds for help assisting people with upgrades to their home. So we're very pleased to notify that we were approved for that once again. All right, next up is Resolution 2021-17. And this is in regards to the purchase of that small piece of property there on Apple Creek Drive, parcel 431-17-116. Are there any comments or questions on this one?
Move to recommend adoption.
Second.
To recommend council adopt, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
All right, and then a sister ordinance to that, or excuse me, resolution to that, Resolution 2021-18. This is authorizing the mayor to enter into a community recreation conservation project pass-through agreement with the Department of Natural Resources. All right. Any
Move
comments or questions on this?
to, move to adopt.
Second.
To recommend council adopt, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
All right, very good. And we will go ahead and talk about 2021-14 in Committee of the Whole. And so the last thing that we have here for under old business is Ordinance 2021-15. And this is enacting Section 13507 regarding the Audit Committee. And Mr. Raguse went through this at our last meeting. Are there any additional comments or questions regarding this policy? Okay, that is on second reading. All right, for new business tonight, the first item is Resolution 2021-21, and this is adopting the tax budget for the fiscal year 2022. And are there any comments or questions on this? A housekeeping ordinance we have to pass every year, but are there any comments or questions on this resolution? All right, next is Resolution 2021-22. This is on first reading, but we hope to pass by suspension of the rules. This is to authorize the community cost sharing agreement with the sewer district. Are there any comments or questions regarding this resolution?
May I be recognized?
Yes.
I just have a question as far as what is the specific project? I saw on the last page that it's various locations throughout the city.
So after Dave Colstar had left, our city engineer, Dan Garrison, pointed out that we should be checking all retention and detention bases on a yearly basis. and having solid reports to the EPA. So in multiple cities, they work with Soil and Water District to do this. So this will perform all new construction. They will monitor it. They will do our annuals, and they will help us reporting to the EPA.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I will make a recommendation that council adopt by suspension of the rules this evening.
Second.
To recommend council adopt by suspension, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
All right, and the last item that's on our agenda for this evening is Ordinance 2021-18. And this is providing for the sale of the bonds for the construction of the new city hall at $25 million. And of course, this is on first reading. And as Mr. Raguse mentioned at the last meeting, we got a very favorable percent rate for our other debt that we rolled forward. And so we would anticipate having that same for this as well, which is obviously good news. All right, are there any comments or questions regarding this?
I just had one brief question. Have we locked into the exact term?
Not the exact term. We believe it's going to be 25 years. We just don't know the way. But the year we're certain of.
I think that was my only question. Oh, you know what? One more. When we have the call with Moody's, do we anticipate that that will be an affirmation of our current rating?
Good question. Yes, we do. Talking with our municipal advisor, we believe that it's going to be, our rating's going to stay the same. We have a lot of stuff outside of our control as far as just local stuff is concerned that we don't anticipate getting a better credit rating, even regardless of the fund balance that we currently have in the strong debt capacity. So we do believe that, but I'm hopeful that it'll be an improvement.
Okay. Do they ever increase it, like just based on these conference calls, or is it always done, for example, what we did previously where we had them into the city for the whole day?
So there have been increases in the past as far as these ratings calls are concerned. It hasn't happened as much in recent history as it has before, but it does happen. But a lot of times it is affirmation of your current credit rating. They do surveillance of you every year. They look at your financials. They ask for information at times. But this is where they really hit on the issues and the positives and the concerns of the organization. But saying that we anticipate it to stay the same.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
All right, that's all for our legislation. We'll get to the question that was raised by Mrs. Pucci at the last meeting in just a second. But Mr. Raguse, did you have anything that you wanted to add for finance?
Other than that, other than legislation, I'll go over my financial report in the city council meeting. And I did give a brief overview of what our rate was as far as those participation notes are concerned. They're at the 1.18% that we anticipated. So obviously, as you mentioned earlier, very strong, and it favors us going into this debt issuance for the Civic Center.
Very good. All right, anything else? Okay.
Just one.
I'm sorry, Mario, go ahead.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry,
Yep.
Ryan. You know, the question came up about our conversations with KeyBank. The county did hook us up with their contact at KeyBank, so we'll be organized that between Tom and Jeremy and myself, as well as their real estate broker. So it may provide a little bit more insight, but they definitely wanted to talk, which is a good sign, and hopefully we get a little bit more insight than we did on the local call. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so as was meant,
Are we asking questions about the financials for April, or is that held off to committee of the whole?
no, go right ahead. We're in finance and everyone's here, so go right ahead.
Okay.
If you have a question.
So just a quick question, Tom, regarding what we're attributing to the one-time or non-occurring revenue that seems to be ongoing. Do we have a sense of, I mean, clearly the withholding is up, but are these exclusively or mostly net profits or a combination?
Good question. Mostly net profits. There is one or two pieces of withholding for bonuses, but it's mostly large net profit distributions that you cannot really count on in the future as far as
Right.
forecasting budgeting is concerned.
Right, I understand that. I just wanted to get a sense of where the bulk of these non-occurring revenues are coming from.
And
Thank
I
you.
can, going forward, I can break that out as far as net profits and withholding is concerned in my memos going forward, if that would help.
Okay. All right. We good? Is that all, Mrs. Pucci, for that?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay. So at the last meeting, Mrs. Pucci briefly mentioned or discussed the amount that the administration is allowed to spend without council approval on an individual purchase, and that is $50,000. And so I don't know if council got Mrs. Pucci's email today, but she sent an email out regarding this, and I said at the last meeting we would discuss this. And so, Mrs. Pucci, I don't know if you want. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to read that. So, if you wanted to add anything to it, or kind of explain a little more what you're looking at.
So basically, you had suggested that I send an email as a reminder. So I thought it would be more efficient, since we seem to be under a time crunch this evening, if I just gave the background, which is why I included all that. And I mean, I have to say, I was kind of a little surprised. I don't know, a bit of like a hostile response, but I did mention this at the previous meeting. This is clearly something that would take a very in-depth dive into it, which is what I included in my my email. So I guess if I just, start at the beginning, I provided the background. This is nothing that I'm hiding or at all. We are permitted to propose an idea or, send an email to each other, just like the administration communicates with each other initially on things that council has to approve. So, I mean, I wasn't trying to keep it from anybody. I just sent it out to council so they'd all have the background. Anyways, the last Charter Review Commission, this issue was not raised because I don't believe anyone was aware that it was an issue until Mr. Raguse started. So the other thing is, which I didn't put my personal opinion in because I thought, this is going to be a lengthy process for us to investigate and have a lot of discussions. I'm one person of 7. But I also agree with the mayor that a $15,000 threshold would be too low in this day and age. I also understand some of the challenges with the current makeup of the Board of Control. And I think that's something that should be open for discussion as well, whether we're going to continue to have it, if we're going to continue to have it, raising some of those limits or how we could make it work more efficiently. So as far as the charter review meeting in 2023, I kind of saw this as an opportunity this summer to take the opportunity, as I mentioned in my email that I sent early this morning, we need to really know what are the legal definitions in the state code for all these terms, budgets, appropriations, deposits, expenditures, because we look at those terms and think one thing, but we need to know how does the state define those, which I think the mayor and I are on the same page as far as having a complete understanding of what those mean and what the possible ramifications would be. So there are 3 ways to put something on the ballot for a charter review, and I wasn't advocating one over the other. Council can put it on. Council's mandated to put on what the Charter Review Commission comes up with. And then, of course, there's initiative petitions by citizens who can do that. So I clearly understand that this is a lengthy process and that it is more complicated than what it is at first glance, which is why I thought the summer would be a good opportunity to have Mr. Raguse and Mr. Butler look into some of these issues and give us a complete picture of, like I mentioned before, what all of these definitions are and what possible ramifications are. I just shared my opinion that I believe the 50,000 is too high for our community. I might be, the only one of 7, but, I just find that a lot of times I feel like we're finding out about certain things after the fact. Pre-COVID, I had a couple brief conversations with Mr. Butler about this. And, I know that we can view the minutes, but that really is after the fact, because actually the agenda is not posted ahead of time. When the public notices, there is no agenda. So if there is something, we, basically find out about it afterwards. So this was just kind of meant as like just an opening idea. And again, this is going to be a lengthy process to figure out, one, what are all the ramifications if we decide to make a change, if we want to make a change, and the best way to accomplish that. So that was my intention with sharing this. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Pucci. So in discussing this, so are you thinking that council should discuss this and then make a recommendation to the Charter Review Committee to put it on with the other ones in 2023? Is that what you're thinking?
So I'm not making that suggestion. I am suggesting, first of all, for those of you who've been on council and, the mayor may have experienced this also, from the time the Charter Review Commission is appointed to the time everything has to be on the ballot, believe it or not, it's a very fast process as far as being able to, research and different things like that. I know the mayor mentioned, Mr. Butler keeping a list. I've always kept a list, and I have always asked to speak with members of the Charter Review Commission just to share different things that have come up and, possible solutions. But of course, at the end of the day, it's up to them to decide what they're going to recommend on the ballot. I just know that this is more complicated than when you just look at it first glance. And I just wanted to make sure that we start looking at this. Like I said, I thought the summer would be an ideal time because we're not meeting regularly, just to at least start looking into it, get all the possible ramifications. Because as I said in my email, the fact that we need to know more about this, and the mayor mentioned, possible ramifications. If you make one little change, it could change something else, which could be an unintended consequence. I understand that, which is why I said we should be looking at, taking a deeper dive into it. So that's all.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with that at all personally. My only suggestion would be that if council does think that we should make a change, that we recommend it to the Charter Review Commission and it goes on at one time. Because you're right, before I was on council, I served on that Charter Review Commission. And although it seemed like it was a long time, it's really not, especially when you're going into it blind. And I read the charter before I came in, but I didn't really know at that time what needed to be changed. So if council does want to make a change, that would be my recommendation would be that we do it through that process. And then, we can present that to that Charter Review Commission. That would be my recommendation. That way, really it would have to be a special election, I think, because we have an election this year, but then nothing until 2023. I know there might be school stuff that's on the levy or on the ballot in the springs. But I would think that would probably be the best way to go would be to do it through the Charter Review Commission. That was just my thoughts. And again, I don't know either. I haven't experienced really any issues with the spending threshold as it is. Council does adopt the budget, and I haven't experienced anything. But I'm not saying that council shouldn't look at reducing it. But to me, if we're going to do it, that would be the best time to do it, and to make that recommendation. That way, it's a nice clean thing if there's 3, 4, 5, 6 changes on there at one time as opposed to just one at a time. But again, I have no problem whatsoever looking into it.
Oh, yes. And just to clarify, I mean, certainly my intention was for nothing related to this year. I mean, I just thought the summer would be a good opportunity to bring it up so that we could, have sufficient time when things aren't so busy to get the necessary information that we need and have a discussion. Yeah. Oh, I if anyone thought that this would be for this year, I mean, there would be absolutely no way.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that. I was just saying that if we were going to do it, it would have to be like in a special election type situation, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know.
No, I would never suggest that we pay for a special election.
Okay.
I would not suggest that.
All right, Mr. Selhertz, anything from you on this committee regarding that?
No, just Katie, I think, had her hand raised for something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I can't see everybody on my little screen. Go ahead, Mayor.
Sure. So, I think that this Board of Control has been under fire a lot. And I'll tell you, and I've expressed in my opinion, this is not a joy for John Verba and I to, spend every other Wednesday doing Board of Control, but it is a legal obligation of ours under the charter with the 5,000 threshold. And you have to understand, as I stated in my email, this is sometimes the third and fourth time I've seen these expenditures. I'd be curious. I asked Mr. Butler the conversation that occurred. He doesn't remember anything. So I'd be curious to see if there are any particular items that the administration did not disclose in conversation or issues that have come up, because the only way we can tackle things is proper communication with everybody. So I'm curious if there are particular items that City Council has an issue with that the current administration is doing, and doing so legally, which hadn't been doing properly before. So, one of the great things about hiring high quality people like Mr. Butler and Mr. Raguse is that we better our process. We make sure that we're following law, and we make sure that we are, running a tight ship. And when that is our constant goal, is to continue to improve. So if there are issues that are coming out of this administration, I'd ask that they be brought to light. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
No, I would just say that, I'd have to go back and look at specific things that, I think it would have been, nice to know ahead of time. However, I recognize 100% that now that we've had this analysis and explanation that, of course, we're following the law. And I understand the challenges with the Board of Control. Some other cities have a higher threshold, and sometimes they have considered that too low for the Board of Control. So I think the two go hand in hand in my mind. And I think we should be looking at both of them and getting as much information as possible, a good analysis, and also as much input as possible.
Okay. All right, very good. Anyone else on the committee?
All good.
All right, I'll make a recommendation then that we adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Before we go into the next meeting, can I just ask a quick question? I'm having, some people are breaking up, and I don't know if it's on my end or anyone else's end. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you
I'm not
fine.
hearing anything breaking up from anybody speaking right now.
You're just like when you're talking, you keep on talking, but you freeze up on the screen a second or two.
It says low bandwidth for you.
Pardon me?
It says low bandwidth when you're speaking.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you just froze up.
Yeah, it does freeze, but we can still hear you. It just takes a minute for the picture to catch up. So, okay, all right. I'll go ahead and call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Mary Jo, can you call the roll, please?
Ron Van Kirk,
Here.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Here.
Andy Selhertz,
Here.
Kathy Pucci,
Here.
Mary Belvier,
Here.
Kevin Tansky,
Here.
Sue Grodick.
Here.
All right, the first item we have is the minutes from our previous meeting dated May 10th. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Make a motion that we approve.
Second.
To approve the minutes, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belvier,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
All right, the first item we have on our agenda is Ordinance 2021-14. We had quite a lengthy discussion about this, and this is updating the classification plan inside of our ordinances. And Mr. Butler did post to board docs the updated version of that. And so the plan tonight would be to read I'll have Mr. Butler read these amendments and changes into the record. Then we will place it on second reading to be adopted at next meeting. Are there any additional comments or questions regarding this?
Kevin will probably jump in, but actually on the agenda, it is saying it's held in abeyance for the June 14th meeting.
Right.
The
Yeah,
request.
I didn't want to do the amendments and then leave it in, then pass it right away. I discussed that with Mr. Butler. We can certainly ask him, but that was the plan from before, was to read into all the amendments and then have it go one more reading. But if Mr. Butler, is he here or not
He
yet?
is, he's just
I'm here.
done.
All right,
Mr. Chair.
Did you hear what I
Thanks.
said?
So can I make
I
a?
wanted,
Oh,
pardon me, let me get off my phone here. Hang on a sec. Mr. Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, great. Thanks. I want to clear up one remaining issue with respect to fire personnel before we read this for an additional time. So I'd ask that it remain in abeyance until the next meeting.
Okay. So the question would be then, Mr. Butler, at the next meeting, should we then read everything into the record, then pass it that night, or should we leave it for one more reading?
I would read everything into the record that night. If you want to leave it for another reading after that, that's perfectly fine with you. If you want to pass it that night, that would be fine with me.
So we'll plan on doing that then next meeting. We'll hold in advance one more meeting. The next meeting, we'll read everything into the record and then vote on it on that following meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional questions on this before we move on? Okay. The last thing on the agenda then, as far as our legislation goes, is Ordinance 2021-17. And this is amending section 105.03 definitions in the codes. And there are just some updated language in there. Mr. Butler, did you want to reiterate this? This involves the council meeting in this venue in the future. And all of council got this this week. Basically, the idea behind this is that if there's an emergency or a reason that council needs to meet outside of our regularly scheduled council meeting, I guess, or even during times of regularly scheduled council meeting, we will be able to do it in this venue. I can see this coming into play, like for a special meeting sometime during the summer when we're not in session, and yet, you know, we need to vote on one piece of legislation. I can't tell you how many times we've done that, and we all have to come in, which we're happy to do. It takes 5 minutes and we're gone, but it would be much easier to do it this way. So essentially, as you read through the ordinance, that's what it would allow us to do. It could either be called by the president of the council or by a majority of the vote of the members of council. And so I don't anticipate using this a ton, but it would be nice since we have the technology to be able to do it. And of course, we would have to update our ordinance in order to do that. All right, Mr. Butler, does that about sum it up?
It sure does, Mr. Chair. I used the language that has been used thus far by the state legislature to permit open meetings by remote attendance. And I just added the additional definition of open to the public, which is a regulation found within your local open meetings chapter 10503, chapter 105. And by adding that definition, open to the public, we were able to identify those limited circumstances in which a remote meeting might be appropriate. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the language that I chose to use in this particular introductory version of this ordinance. And I think you've got some time to consider it. I don't believe we're requesting emergency passage this evening.
That's correct. All right. Anyone on council have any questions for Mr. Butler regarding this?
I will say, Mr. Chair, just very briefly, I know we've got presentations. Brooklyn is very fortunate to not have a restriction in its charter that obligates our public bodies to follow to the letter of the law the Open Meetings Act, which is a body of state code. for me, it makes this kind of legislation possible. And it makes your ability to exercise your authority in emergency situations or some sort of special situations more fluid and elegant. And so I really, to the extent any municipality could do this, I would recommend they do it. But a lot of municipalities can't. And so I think you're very fortunate not to have to suffer the vagaries of the state legislature on the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for putting this together. Then, council, as you read through it over the coming days, if you have any comments or suggested changes, please email Mr. Butler so we can get those in, so we can get this passed in a timely fashion. Right now, does anyone have any questions regarding it? All right, very good. All right, we do have two guests with us this evening, and we'll start with our representative from Bowen who's with us, Robin Wolf. Mayor, did you want to introduce her before she says anything, or do you just want to turn it over to her?
You guys are going to be best friends with Robin soon, so I don't think I need to introduce her.
All right, go ahead, Robin. Thank you for being here.
Hey, Ron?
Yes. Yes.
We were going with Carrie first because he's actually on an off day today. That's what we talked about.
Oh, no problem. I just want to say hi to Robin real quick. Robin, we'll get right with you.
That's fine. Sorry.
All right.
All right.
That's okay. No problem. All right, Kevin, or excuse me, Andy, if you want to go ahead and introduce Carrie from Real Term, and then he can make his presentation.
All right, Carrie, he's already done a presentation once before for us with the GIS audit with First Energy. He gave us the audit report. Tom and I have been looking over it. We've had some questions. So Carrie's going to try to resolve those questions for us and also kind of put us in a better direction of where we're going. And it's all up to you, Carrie.
Well, thanks, Andy. Can you guys hear me okay? Sound all right?
It's a little soft.
A little soft. Let's see what we can do about that. How's that? Is that any better?
Not really, but we can hear you. Go ahead.
Hang on, I should be able to get that a little bit better. How's that?
Oh, there you go. That's better.
All right.
Good.
So I'm hoping that Robin doesn't hate me too much because I just bumped her and I didn't really mean to.
That was my fault. I forgot that you were supposed to go first.
That's okay. Thanks. Okay, so I have a little screen sharing to do here. Just one moment as I do that. That's the one there. One sec, as I do this. Does everybody have a chance to see that screen?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've done the audit. Surprise, surprise. We only started this last February. When I say last February, I mean February 2019, or 20 rather. Sorry. So we did actually manage to send somebody into the field back in September, October, and with Andy's help and going back and forth, we managed to map out every light in the city. It looks like this from the air. This light, I can send you a link, by the way, for anybody who wants to expand into this and click down into each one of these little circles that shows what it is and what kind of a light it is. But the summary is this. We looked at basically 4 different categories: those that are on the utilities inventory, and those that are not on the utilities inventory, utility being First Energy. And of those 2 categories, which ones belong to the city and which ones don't belong to the city. So at the end of it all, we found that there were 942 lights that belonged to the city that were on the inventory, and there were 40 lights that were on the inventory that didn't belong to the city. So those came off. Not on the utilities inventory that belong to the city, there's 122 of them. And that doesn't belong to 273. The bottom line is that the total number of streetlights that you actually have that are properly yours and are now readjusted to be on the utility is 1,064. And of that number, there's been about 227, at least as of last fall, that have been updated. We'll have to just check that with the final records. But basically, that means that if you're going to convert to LEDs, you have 837 to do. Okay. Of the fixture types that were there, about 60%, 59% are Cobra heads, 39% are NEMA heads, and then you have 1% of the inventory, about 17 that are decorative fixtures. And as to the technology, high pressure sodium or mercury vapor accounts for almost 80% of the lights. And as I said, there's a small number that have already been about 21% that's been converted to LED. Of the fixture types that we talked about before, there's the standard Cobra head that everybody knows, I'm sure, the decorative fixture, and then this is what the NEMA fixture looks like. It always looks like a mayonnaise jar stuck on a light to me, but there we go. And we did the little bit of, what are the variances by type? So this is what the original inventory looked like that we were given in 2020. Then the updated inventory for the type and the quantity, the type being HPS versus metal, mercury vapor at each wattage level. And then we compared them to what we found actually in the field. So initially the inventory said 588 high pressure sodium and 394 metal mercury vapor. Sorry, there's metal halide is the other one, starts with M. And it turns out that you actually only have 558, not 588, for a net variance of 30 less, 30 less than they originally thought, and 115 less of the mercury vapor. And as I said, there's 227 that have been converted to LEDs already. So there's your total 1,064 total lights that you got. So it's actually 82 to the good, meaning more than you thought you had. Oh, by the way, I want to go back one, sorry. I just want to draw your attention to this thing here, that of the LEDs that have been done, this is what the new LEDs that have gone in have been to replace the other ones that have come out. And 50 is the bottom end of the range there. 50 watt LED is the bottom end of the range. We're going to come back to that. So this is a listing of all of the existing lights that you've got. I know these are sort of model numbers. I'm sorry we use it that way, but the figure you want to look at is the 100 watts, 150, 175, 250. These are the existing lights that are to be converted. So the utility has what's called a 1-for-1 approach. So they basically say you had a 100 watt high pressure sodium, you put in a 50 watt Cobra head or LED. 150 goes to 90, 175 to 50, 250 to 130, and so on and so on. So this is their proposed way of doing it. And note that it doesn't involve anything less than 30 watts. So we do lighting design at Real-Term Energy. We've done 320 odd thousand lights using lighting design across North America. We know from a lot of experience that it isn't necessarily optimizing the energy savings potential that is there if by just switching it out at basically a 50% drop. We typically can get a lot more than 50%. So we've anticipated post-upgrade, if we apply lighting design, we can use a variety of different fixtures in larger quantities and actually have some material savings. We're going to come back to that. So rather than putting a 50 in, our designers will be able to put in a 30 with no loss of safety, no loss of aesthetics. It's just you don't need 50, only 50% savings. You can actually get 70% savings. That's for 331. It matches where 90 would become 50, 130 would become 90, and so on. So of these 837, by using lighting designs, we anticipate you'd be able to have substantially more energy reductions than what the utility does. Now that doesn't show up hugely on their monthly charge. If you can see, this is 50 watts. Oh, sorry guys, tricky mouse. This is 50 watts. You pay $7.97 for a 50 watt bulb per month. 30 watts is only $7.83. So the delta is only 14 cents. Doesn't seem like very much, but that's not really where it shows up. So this is your, what we call the baseline. This is what you're currently, hang on, let me just get this right. The savings versus the baseline would be 426,000, basically 51%. 51% is what the utility is proposing your drop in consumption would be. By using lighting designs overall, we can stretch that to 62%. Again, no loss of safety, no loss of aesthetics, perfectly fine, with a net gain of 11%. So that shows up on your bill as a variance on the distribution fixture charges of $4,834 per year, and on the commodity charge of $3,000. So that actually gives you a combined savings per year by actually applying lighting designs of $7,800 or $7,837. So it's worth it to do that, okay? And you actually just get better lighting at the same time. Now I know I'm going to be throwing a lot of numbers at you here, so bear with me. So you have two options for doing an LED upgrade with photocells. So these are prescribed in the tariff that First Energy has had through the Public Utilities Commission. So these are sort of carved in stone. So to do an upgrade to LEDs, you would be paying $242 per LED to be upgraded. With the 837 lights, that's a little over $200,000. That's an upfront cash payment in addition to the monthly charge that you'll pay. So that charge is not so much for the new light, it's to pay for the unamortized value of the old light, okay? And it doesn't matter if it's a NEMA or a decorative or a regular Cobra head. The price that you would pay is $242 per LED. So that gives you that. The second option is that you can pay a monthly charge of $516 for each new LED for 5 years. So this is sort of on-bill financing versus a cash upfront financing. So let's have a look to see how that actually works in the grand scheme of things. So here again, this is the 837 fixtures that are being upgraded. Option 1, upfront cost, $242 or $202,000. And this is the 60-month payment period, which is that over here. Can you guys see my mouse move? Is that all right? Yes?
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
So again, $242 up front or the $516 monthly. The delta is $56,581. So basically, that's what you'll be paying the utility to use their financing over using your own funds. All of this, by the way, is the bottom half of this is what we've already sort of billed you for. We are billing you for the audit, and then what the design cost would be. The total design cost is a little under $5,000. Recall that by doing design, you're looking at savings in the first year of about $7,800. So it obviously looks like it's a good idea to do design. I'm going to be obviously that's what we do. So anyway, the delta is this table is meant to represent $56,000 if you use their financing charge. Okay. How does that translate over 20 years for the operating costs? Your 20-year operating cost today, without doing anything, would be a little under 4.4 million. Using this option, which is the option 1 upfront costs and our design, you'd be paying your operating costs would go down to $33,582,000 for basically a 20-year savings of $812,000. One thing that's important about here, it's far better for you. This is the delta here, that if you use the payment plan versus you paying up front, that's how that sort of levels out. Now you have two options when it comes to smart controls. So smart controls are, I know you guys listened to this the first time we did this, but instead of a photocell, it is a two-way communications device that can talk to a central management system that conveys information in real time as to the state of the light, whether it's tilting or whether it's there's been an undervolt or an overvolt or something wrong with it, a fuse blown or whatever. I'll come back to that in a minute, but it's a smart network. It's the basics of what's where everybody refers to as the smart city. So you have two options for adding smart controls on top of the converting to LEDs. One is a cash payment for all the smart controls, and there's more of them, recall, because you would be adding the smart controls to the existing stock of 277 LEDs, as well as all the other ones, the 837. So it's actually the 1,064 that you'd be doing this. So it'd be, whoops, sorry about the mouse. Let's get this right, come on. Okay. So that's option 1, or option 3 rather, is $141,000 upfront and $77 per month, 77 cents, pardon me, per month. And that's on a monthly charge that would be reset after 10 years. The tariff only goes out 10 years. They do not know what the cost, what that $77 will change to. The alternative is another on-bill financing charge of $2.81 for each smart control over 10 years. So here's a similar table showing what the costs would be. And basically, to finance the smart controls over this time 10 years would be costing $119,000 more than if you paid the $141 yourselves. So again, it's not economical to use First Energy's financing with their internal financing rates. Okay, again, the bottom half of this table is the same. So the best way to compare these options is using a net present value. So what that is that's the value today of the future benefits of financing a project. And it's calculated by comparing the cost of the project today to the annual benefits over time, that specific amount of time, and it usually coincides with the useful life of the asset that you're financing. So in this case, we're talking about 20 years, which is the useful life of an LED luminaire. The future returns, and that's the savings, they're discounted to account for the time value of money, because $1 today is worth more than $1 in 20 years. And the highest net present value of the various options, that represents the best economic value. Now, I'm not going to show you a table, a wall of numbers that goes out 20 years and all the various options. We put this together in a summary table. But the started off rate, we've used a discount rate of 5%, and assuming the utility cost of inflation is the 3%. So a 3% increase in the cost of your utility rate. I don't know if that's going to be, how that's going to be over time. I don't know how it reflects over the last 5 or 10 years. It's one that we use in most The only thing that's important here is that whatever we do, we compare the options 1, 2, 3, and 4 using the same discount rate and the same inflation rate. Both of those may change, but if you apply them to all options, you get a comparative value. So what do we get? So if you use the utilities one-for-one approach, the upfront costs would be 271. Yeah, let me get this right here. If you use the RTE design approach, the net present value would be your highest value. This is the best economic value. I'm not talking about the other benefits of having smart controls, for example, but your best economic value would be to finance the LEDs yourselves, which is the $242,000, rather than doing it on the on-bill financing, because that would reduce it down to 369. And if you add smart controls to the mix, it reduces the overall net present value to the city to $123,387. The best way to read this is that the smart controls, without the benefit of adding the design adds $120,000 net present value over the 20 years, is that they're not economical over 20 years if you use their billing. They're barely economical at $3,200 if you don't apply the design. So the reason for this is that there is an economic benefit of adding LEDs, because your consumption and your distribution charges go down, so you get savings. The smart controls don't have an economic benefit as yet. They are a cost, and there's some facilities that things that it facilitates, but it isn't necessarily going to give you any costs or any cost savings. Okay, so the difference between this and this, your best option and your best option with smart control, probably your best option with the LEDs and your best option with the smart controls, is $268,363. We're going to come back to that number. Okay. So what are the benefits of smart controls? As I said before, it creates a two-way communication network between a central control and each luminaire. It allows for instant notification of numerous faults, not all of them, but numerous ones, the most common ones that can be detected by the control. Things like power fluctuations, over or under volt, tilt detection, which is usually an indication of a pole knockdown. If it goes to like over 15% or something, it'll send an alarm for that. If there's a luminaire failure or a power outage, which could be a fuse failure or on the line. And that early fault detection means that the utility knows that there's a problem prior to a citizen or an employee notification. And as long as they know about it, in theory, they can actually cure it faster if they act upon that fault notification. But there's no guarantee that they know about it, that they're going to dispatch a crew out tomorrow, but at least they know about it. You're not waiting for a citizen to report it to you or to the utility. They'll know because it shows up on their dashboard every morning that something happened last night that requires action. So a lot of faults can be diagnosed and remedied with one truck roll. And that's advantageous to whoever's doing the maintenance, because you don't have to send a crew out to say, oh, the light's out, diagnose the problem, send the crew back, bring the new part, go back and redo it. That's 2 truck rolls. In the long run, that actually is a tremendous cost saving. Additionally, this would be important for you, is that lights can be dimmed to lower levels during low traffic hours. So that saves additional energy if that's permitted by the utility, and it actually prolongs the life of the luminaire. Doesn't do anything for the city of Brooklyn, but it does something for the utility. So the smart controls, they are completely independent of, by the way, the cameras, the Wi-Fi extensions, or any other what we call edge devices, air quality monitors, water quality monitors, things like that. In other words, you do not need to have smart controls to add cameras, Wi-Fi extenders, or other things. They can be added without having to put those nodes on. They work perfectly well with photocells. So when we were comparing those costs, you don't need to have smart controls to be able to have smart devices, edge devices that do other things like cameras and Wi-Fi extension. Okay. So there is something that the utility is considering with this. They will allow Brooklyn to specify a number of lights that can be dimmed over specific hours of the night. And they do that annually. So of your 1,064 lights, you may say, we want to have these 700 dimmed down between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning, say 30%. That's called a dimming profile, and it will result in consumption savings. And these savings will be pre-calculated by the utility, and that'll be reflected on the city's utility bill. So they'll figure out what that savings would be, and they'll adjust your billing accordingly. And they'll do that once a year in advance. And the reason they can't do it, even though the meter inside the smart controls will say how much energy it's consuming, whether it's 30 watts or 26 watts or whatever. The current federal legislation does not allow them to use that meter for building purposes. Not yet. It's coming. We've all heard it's coming for many years. It is coming, but not yet. So this is their compromise, that they'll say, okay, well, if we dim it everything by 30%, we should be able to save this much. We'll apply that to your bill. I don't know what that is yet. That's a negotiation that has to be done post this presentation. They will allow you to modify that dimming profile once a year. So is it going from 100% to 70, 100% to 25? Is it 700 lights? Is it 644 lights? Once a year you can tweak it, but not more than that. Okay? As yet, there's no determination of what those consumption savings are going to be, or what that reduced rate is going to be. That, as I say, is a matter of negotiation. But going back to that number we identified before, the savings over those 20 years would have to exceed $268,000 for the city to be compensated for those upfront and annual costs for adding the controls. Okay. Now, excuse me, I did a back of the napkin calculation just before I got on this presentation, but I haven't been able to put it into a PowerPoint yet. But it seems to me that in order to get $270,000 worth of savings, you would have to be having an extremely aggressive modified billing. Now, because there's going to be less maintenance on the LEDs, especially if they have the controls on them, the utility will know that in advance. But I don't see that their maintenance fee is going to be dropping just because they're putting LEDs up. So those savings would have to be, pushed out like 40 years, not 20 years. So this is a subject we're going to have to talk about with the utility. What is that rate going to be? In other words, are smart controls worth it economically? Today, I would say no. If I was your consultant say, should I put in smart controls? I would say no. It really benefits the utility, but you don't own them. So you would get the benefit of dimming, but recall that we've already put in that we're going to be using much lower wattage fixtures than the utility would put in. You're actually getting the benefit of those additional savings. So that kind of nullifies things on the economic side. So I wouldn't recommend that we go ahead with this unless we can get a favorable rate for both maintenance and for the reduced energy charge by whatever the consumption or that dimming profile is. Okay. So again, as I said before, this is what a luminaire looks like here. This is a device called the Near Sky 360, which is what the utility is currently offering. This would be the lighting controller, the smart control. This allows us to basically plug anything into that, but it still requires an Ethernet connection. So that means it's not just going to be using the wireless. So although it's possible, excuse me, again, to do this, it's not a requirement to go the smart control route. So I'm going to wrap up by just putting some next steps in here, okay? So the next step is you would authorize our lighting designs to commence. As I say, it's a little under $5,000. You have tremendous savings by doing that. So we can actually, rather than estimate it, we'll actually get it light by light by light, okay? So we'll design those new locations. We'll firm up the savings estimates and get back to you with that if there's anything that has to be adjusted. If it is, it's not going to be major. And then we would propose meeting with the utility to establish that dimming profile and what those savings are going to be. And then from there, determine the feasibility of the smart controls. Whoop, I don't know why it's doing that. And then determine which option you want to pursue, 1, 2, 3, or 4. The city has received utility special tariff agreements. I've read through them some time ago. They're fairly straightforward, nothing alarming in them. So you'd have to negotiate and sign those. And then you determine the timetable for execution. Here's the trick. Smart controls require 18 weeks for the NIC card to come from the factory. It's happening all over the world. There's a real lag on that. So it would delay the project if you wanted smart controls by at least 18 weeks. They also have a very poor installation schedule. Sorry, guys. They have a very poor installation schedule. I'm encouraging them to use outside contractors to actually do the work. They are definitely weakening. I'm going to propose myself to do that because we can get it done in a couple of weeks as opposed to what would be close to a year for them to do it at the rate that they are prescribing. So that's the brief report. I know I threw a lot of numbers at you. I'm certainly ready to, if you have any questions, please fire away.
All right, thank you, Kerry. For the sake of time, we're going to have council, if they have any questions, to email Mr. Selhertz and he will get those to you. And then we will more than likely bring you back for a different type of committee meeting for this. But I very much appreciate your time on this. We've got to move on to someone else. But great presentation, and I appreciate that. And you'll be hearing from us soon in the future.
It'll be my pleasure. Okay, over to you, Robin.
All right, thanks, Kerry. Robin, go right ahead. Listen, you don't have to feel like you rush. It's okay that we go over for a few minutes. So go ahead and discuss what you have to discuss. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. No, I can be brief. I thank you for having us here tonight to give you an update on the City Center project. I am going to share my screen real quick. Visuals to look at. So we talked to you, I think, about a month ago, and it's been a very busy month since the 26th. So on April 27th, the day after we last saw you, we submitted our schematic design level documents. So those have been they were given to the city. They've also been in with our Bowen's estimator and Panzica CMR for estimates for the project budget, as well as the first GMP for the early site package. We will get those numbers tomorrow from both sides, and then this Wednesday, the 26th, GPD is your owner's rep, Bowen and Panzica will be sitting down to go through a budget reconciliation meeting between the two sets of estimates, and we'll work through any differences and come to agreement on what the budget for the project should be, and then we'll be sitting down with the mayor and I believe the finance director on June 4th to present the final budget to the mayor and move forward from there. So that, and then as long as everything goes well with the estimates, we should be seeing you coming to council on the 14th to present the project budget and the GMP for the site work for the first reading. But we'll keep you updated on that after we get the numbers tomorrow. Also, we've been to Planning Commission and we received final approval from planning on May 6th. May 20th, we won for zoning variance and we received approval for the variance for the setback for the new parking lot that will service the rec center in the southeast portion of the site. And I believe we have one more piece of planning left, the conditional approval for the use, the public safety center use. It will be going to Planning Commission, I believe, next month, the beginning of June. So we've got all of our pieces, parts in order there. And then also tomorrow, we have another milestone deliverable for the documents. It's our design development level set. So we're digging further into the setting the plan and making sure all of our scope pieces are within the set. And we'll give it, our estimators will get a bit of a break and then go right into estimating and design development set to hone in on the overall budget numbers for everything other than the site. So then as far as, as far as scope goes, you've seen the site plans before. We have, not much has changed. They've done some refinement to the grading around the city center, but the planting plan and the buffer zone and the plaza are moving forward as you had seen them before. We've looked at the materials palette previously. We are still moving forward with this kind of neutral palette with the brown and tan and varied brick colors, curtain wall and cast stone. And then last we saw you, we had a rendering, this rendering, and I believe we still had fins on the curtain wall. I know we've gone back and forth with talking about the fins. As we've worked through developing this in the iterations since then, we really have come to like no fins on the curtain wall itself. So it's just a nice glassy reflective appearance on the front. Now I know one of the issues or concerns that you had was that this elevation started to look unbalanced with a single window here. So we've been working through iterations behind the scenes with the mayor and the rest of the team I believe we sent these to you. We did look at a couple windows to balance this out on the right side. I think we had another, sorry, it's a little slow, and then switching them. We're still studying this because again, we haven't hit an aesthetic and appearance here that's made the whole team say, yes, this is our building. So we're working through that too with some other iterations to get to that point where this is your city center. We want you to not just like it, we really want you to love it. So we're working through that. Also, we're working through the interiors. We're not ready to show you those yet. We will be back with another update, especially council chambers, community room, but we want to get those refined a bit more and get them in front of the mayor and the rest of our team before we get them to you. I don't know, Alan, did you have anything else to add?
No. So yeah, this is, a lot has happened, as Robin said, in the last month. Mostly the development of the project. A big milestone was to get the site package complete, and hopefully that could get moving soon, right after the GMP is approved. So,
Robin, do you want to maybe mention the only other question that came up by City Council is by Mr. Tansky about the warming on the walkways in. Do you just want to go over that really quickly? The analysis that you guys did? Yes.
So our occupancy sensors work. Alan and I have been, so we, see here, I'll pull up the email and share the screen again. Our engineers looked at the two different types of snow melt systems that are on the market, which include an electric system and a glycol system. So the electric system is a set of cables that get embedded in the pavement or beneath the pavers, and they get heated through, electrical power, creates resistance and all of that. A glycol system is a set of tubes filled with glycol that run underneath of the pavers. Based on the area that we're looking at, and we're looking at a limited area on the main walkways to the new city center entrance and the police entrance, our engineers did a pro-cons list of electric versus glycol. So what we've gotten to is that for this project, the electric system has a lot more benefits than the glycol will. So there's a lower first cost. You get consistent heat across the area that you're heating, which means you won't have very little icy patches. There are less maintenance costs because you don't have pumps. You don't have the potential for a fluid to leak out of your system. There's just not there's not moving parts to have to be maintained and checked. And then it also requires very little additional floor space to house those pumps and motors and all of that. It really just takes a control panel, which is easily worked into the floor plan as it stands. One drawback is because it is electric, it does cost more to operate because you are reliant upon the electricity costs that you're working with. However, on the glycol side, its biggest pro is it does have lower operating costs. But its initial cost to put in is much higher than an electric system. It also has a tendency, it says, heat derates throughout the piping run. So basically it's hotter at the beginning of the run, and depending on how far out it goes, it can cool down. So you may not get all of the ice or snow melted off of the area where people are walking. And just by nature, you would house the pipe, the beginning of that system in the building. So by the time you got down to the sidewalk where people are getting out of their cars and being dropped off, it may cause some issues. It does have higher maintenance costs. As I mentioned, it has a lot more moving parts and pieces that have to be looked at and maintained yearly. And additional space is needed for those components, which is usually wanted to be near the start of the system, which means it puts it at the very front and entry of the building. So some follow-up questions that we had was lifespan of the system. So this lifespan of a snowmelt system, and this is for an electric snowmelt system, it's a 20-year standard projection for the lifespan of the system. And for the electric system, replacing major components, since there's not a lot, the components that usually have issues are the control panel, and that's easily accessed. Part of the installation of the electric system, they would test the cables for continuity before the concrete is poured after they set it, just to make sure there's no issues or no shorts, because that is the one drawback after the cable is embedded in the concrete. It is, in order to get it out, you have to pull up your concrete. And so we'd also provided some additional information that we had forwarded to the mayor with a troubleshooting guide and also some product data on the snowmelt system itself. So we think the electric system will be good for the city center at the main entries. It'll help you cut down on having salt. It'll help with the longevity of not only your exterior materials, but it'll also keep or minimize the salt migration and water migration into the facility during the winter, and hopefully give John can sleep in, and won't have to get up and come plow in the mornings. Any questions on the snowmelt?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Kevin.
The question that I have is, you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, on the snow melt with the wires, that the farther it goes out, are we on the same system here? The farther it goes out, it does not melt as good?
That's the Glycol system. So the electric system, one of the benefits of it is it has an even heat throughout the length of the system. So if it's 5 feet outside of your building or 25 feet outside of the building, it's going to heat evenly. It's the Glycol system with the fluid in the pipes that has the issue where it can cool down towards the end of the system.
It will still melt.
It will still melt,
just won't
but
be
it may not be consistent.
Second part of that, on the electric system, you said it was 20 years?
Yes.
Is that 20-year warranty that'll be repaired for free for 20 years? Or is that an extended hope to last 20 years?
That's the lifespan of the system. I would have to look at I think the warranties are usually shorter.
I don't think that's a warranty.
No,
Yeah.
it's not going to be.
Yeah, that's not a warranty. That's just a long lifespan. I can check on those.
Those things are going to be very expensive to replace if they go out. Am I correct?
Yes, they will. They are. I guess it depends on if you have to replace the system in entirety. Yes. If it's just a control panel, then it will.
Well, anything in the building is relatively easy to replace. It would cost something. It's the system under the sidewalk, under the slab or the pavers that would get costly if you had to replace.
What is the square footage that these, I'm going to call them panels, are being put in? What will it cover? How much was the space?
Let me double check that. I think it's approximately 1,000 square feet by the time you cover the walk areas that we're looking at.
I know one thing, those systems work very well when they are working. So I'm 100% for it. It's just the longevity, you're saying 20 years. I don't think it's going to last 20 years, but because of the weather that we have here, that's why my question, what kind of cost we got to restart replacing these panels. I'm sure they come in panels where you don't have to replace the whole thing. You would be able to replace sections. Am I correct? So in other words, if a 3-foot section goes out or a 4-foot section, however they come in, would we be able to replace those sections, or that we got to replace the whole thing?
I don't think it comes in a panel. It's a continuous system that is then poured into the concrete.
I would just add, it just depends on what the issue would be when it does go bad. If there are certain sections of the concrete that have issues with the wiring that we need to get replaced, it would just be replacing the concrete in those sections. I would say probably a generality, the 20-year life cycle would be where the entire system would have to be replaced, including the concrete, just as a general, we'll say, rule. And then if anything else kind of went within like less than that 20 years, is probably gonna be more likely equipment or replacing sections under the concrete.
Those systems work very well because I've seen the federal building and the juvenile, and those things are working. There's absolutely no snow on that pad whatsoever. I mean, it melts it down to nothing. So I know they work well.
Yeah, a lot of schools use it also, universities, because the salt is an issue. So they tried to have a certain distance before you enter the building where you could walk off the salt. The theory is that everything under the slab, if it's embedded, how could it fail? Obviously, at times it might, but it becomes encapsulated. So hopefully, the only thing you would be replacing is really within the building, a panel or whatever it might be that runs the system.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, thank you so much. Any other questions for Bowen? Okay, well, thank you so much. We're glad to see we're moving forward. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
All right, glad to see we're moving forward. I'm sure we'll be in touch very soon. Mayor, did you have anything else?
I do not. We will, as an update to my email, we will be having a community presentation on the 7th at 6 p.m. in the Senior Center. We will get communication out to the public in the form of John Benson's doing an article. We're doing email blast, as much information we can get out to alert people of the meeting. It will be in person, but we will also be taping it, and we will upload that same meeting into the board docs where we're following this project. So
very good. All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it, Mayor. Thank you. All right, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki, Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belbeer,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
All right, very good. We'll re-adjourn in about 5 minutes. All right, Mary Jo, you all set?
The recording has started. Everybody's joining back in right now.
Okay, I'm actually going to jump off and jump back on because I can't see anybody, so I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, are we all set?
See if Kevin and Kathy are on.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Okay, your counsel's here.
All right, very good. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for being a part of our meeting. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of May 24th to order. Mary Jo, can you please call the roll?
Ron Van Kirk,
Here.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Here.
Andy Selhertz,
Here.
Kathy Pucci,
Here.
Mary Belbeer,
Here.
Kevin Tansky,
Here.
Sue Grodick.
Here.
Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I will turn it over to Councilwoman Sue Grodick for tonight's opening.
Thank you. I am borrowing a very eloquent description of Memorial Day from a website called familyfriendpoems.com. Memorial Day has come to mean the beginning of summer, a time for picnics and barbecues, and a holiday to gather around the family. That happiness and freedom, however, is a product of a real cause for the holiday, the sacrifice made from the men and women who have fought and died for the freedoms and liberties Americans hold dear. Memorial Day is a time to remember that the American way of life is not cheap, but rather has been purchased by the lives and blood of so many who have sacrificed for us to live free and happily now. I would like to offer a moment of silence to all veterans and active service men and women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Grodick. I appreciate that very much. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of minutes from our last meeting dated May 10th. Does anyone on the council have any comments or questions on those? Make a motion that we approve.
Second.
To approve the minutes, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belbeer,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just want to let everyone know, and I'll probably mention this at the end of our council meeting, but our next council meeting that's dated for June the 14th will be in person in City Hall. So we will look forward to being back in person there and look forward to seeing residents back at our meeting again. So thank you, council, for getting back to me. The decision was unanimous to be back in person meetings on June 14th. So thank you so much for that and look forward to seeing everybody in person. At this time, we'll have the public session. Mary Jo, were there any emails that were sent in with questions?
No, I just checked. There were none.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. We'll now have our reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll begin with the Finance Committee. We met at 6 o'clock this evening due to a lengthy committee, the whole agenda, and discussed the following. Resolution 2021-17. This is authorizing the mayor to enter into a pass-through and sale purchase agreement for a little small portion of Apple Creek Drive. It's parcel number 431171116. We've talked about this at 2 previous meetings. It's a very small piece of property. It's essentially not good for anything except for potentially maybe being part of a pathway in the future. And so the committee did recommend that council adopt this evening. And then a sister ordinance to that, resolution 2021-18, authorizing the mayor to enter into a community recreation conservation project pass-through with the Department of Natural Resources. Then we discussed ordinance 2021-15. enacting section 13507 audit committee of the ordinances of our city. And this follows a similar process for like the debt policy, petty cash funds that we've talked about in the near past. And it's a change from a prior ordinance to the current ordinance as proposed, relation to the frequency of the meetings, et cetera. And so that will be on our agenda this evening. We discussed that. And then under new legislation this evening, we discussed resolution 2021-21. And this is adopting the tax budget for the fiscal year 2022. Resolution 2021-22, authorizing a community cost sharing agreement with the sewer district. And then we do hope to pass that by suspension of the rules this evening. And then lastly was ordinance 2021-18. And this is for the issuance and sale of bonds in the amount of $25 million. And this is, of course, to finance the cost of the city hall that we've been talking about now for the past several months. In addition to that, we had a brief conversation in regards to the spending limit that the administration currently has, which is $50,000. And we had a discussion about potentially looking into lowering that amount. Right now, it's $50,000 per state code. And any change to that would have to be put on the ballot for the voters to decide on. And so council with the administration will be looking into this here this summer and potentially making some recommendations for that going forward. The finance meeting does take place typically at 6:15, but this evening it took place at 6 due to a lengthy schedule for committee of the whole. And all are welcome to attend. It actually will be in person at our next meeting there on June the 14th. With that, we'll move on to a recreation board. Councilman Tansky.
Thank you. Brooklyn Recreation summer hours from June 2nd through August 31st are as follows. Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Schedule includes indoor and outdoor pools, cardio room, and weight room. Please check the facility schedule online at www.brooklynrec.com to see pool lane availability and recreation center events. Memorial Park outdoor basketball tennis courts will be open June 8th through August 8th. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Basketball courts resident hours only, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Residents must register for an account at www.brooklynrec.com and obtain a wristband at the Brooklyn Recreation Center. The Brooklyn Rec Center outdoor pool hours. The outdoor pool will open July 6th through September 10th. At this time, we are not open to non-resident walk-in visits. The outdoor pool hours will be conjunction with the Recreation Center summer operating hours noted above. Patrons may purchase a membership online at www.brooklynrec.com or in person at the Recreation Center. Recreation Board meetings are canceled for June, July, and August. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Tansky. Next up is the Planning Commission. Councilwoman Greta. Yep.
Thank you. We also will be meeting in person. Our meeting will be Wednesday, June 2nd at 6 p.m. And at this time, it will be in council chambers. On our agenda is a request for Bowen for conditional use approval for the new city center at 8000 Memphis Avenue. A review of the Premier Brooklyn LLC approved conditional use for truck and trailer parking for Ruan and XPO, the neighboring business, in a limited industrial district at 4650 Tiedemann Road. A request from Grand Automotive LLC for a window sign for Statewide Auto LLC at 3540 Ridge Road. A request from Fast Signs for 3 wall signs for L. Palinki at 5092 Tiedemann Road. A request from Archer Signs for 3 wall signs for Esporta at 5,000 Tiedemann Road, and that is the name change for LA Sports. A request from Excel Sign Group for a sign package for Dollar Bank at 4730 Ridge Road. A request from Rough Neon Signs for Lighting Maintenance, Inc. for a sign package for Click It Computers at 4786 Ridge Road. A conditional use request for a car wash in a retail business district for a Clean Express Auto Wash at 4630 Ridge Road. And a request from Jason Fenton for a preliminary site plan approval for the Clean Express Auto Wash at 4630 Ridge Road. And of course, the meetings are open to the public, and it will be on Wednesday, June 2nd at 6 p.m. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Grodick. Next up is our school board liaison, Councilwoman Valbier.
Thank you. The Brooklyn High School graduation is Sunday, June 6th at 2 p.m. at the Brooklyn Stadium. The last day for students is Monday, June 7th. There are some capital improvement projects that the school is thinking of, and the first one is the practice field at Hurricane Alley. They've completed most of it, and it's been leveled and seeded and should be ready to use in the fall. The district intends to improve both the home and away parking lots at the stadium this summer, along with some fencing repairs. This is very much needed work, they said. Additionally, the school board is considering some additional upgrades at the stadium, possibly working on a new track. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Valbier. The committee of the whole met this evening just prior to this council meeting. Actually, we ran a little over this evening, and we discussed the following. Ordinance 2021-14. This is repealing and amending various sections of the ordinances of the city of Brooklyn to make sure that our code is in conformity. We held this ordinance in abeyance at the last meeting, and we will anticipate doing so again this meeting to still make additional changes to it. Then Ordinance 2021-17, amending section 10503, definitions of the codified orders of the city of Brooklyn. And this ordinance would allow council to use this venue for council meetings in the future. And there would be have to be a reason given, obviously, for that. And as we've had these meetings and we have this technology, at least I agree, and many on council agree, that it's a good idea to have this in our ordinances so that we can have meetings via Zoom like we are right now in times when we have to meet on a short notice, or the one that I can think of especially is when the summertime, when everyone's gone out of town and we have to meet to vote for one thing. I can't tell you how many meetings we've had in the summer times where we're in and out in literally 5 minutes. And so having this technology would be able, or having this ordinance would enable us to use the technology to do that. And so if we would do that, the meetings would be notified just like they have been now for the last, I don't know, however many months we've been doing this, 6 months we've been doing this. And of course, everyone would have access to it via YouTube or the city's website. And so that is on first reading this evening. And I think it's a good thing. I know that when the ordinance was originally written, Zoom didn't exist. And so updating with the times, I think, would be very beneficial going forward. We don't anticipate doing our regular scheduled council meetings like this. We can't wait to get back, at least I can't, to get back to the regular meetings, but it would be nice, at least in my opinion, to to have this on the books. And so we discussed that briefly tonight, and of course, we'll have a chance to discuss it at 2 more meetings. Then we had 2 presentations this evening. The first of which was from Kerry Wilson, Real Term Energy, and him and Mr. Selhertz have been working for the better part of a year plus now, doing the light inventory in our city, which sounds incredibly boring to me, but they both did a great job on this and found out the exact number of streetlights that we have, and they made a proposal to making them all LED. And if you don't know exactly what that looks like, if you take a drive down Tiedemann Road, most of Tiedemann Road has been converted to those LED lights, and you can definitely tell the ones that are not. And it's a much better light, and they have a better control as to where the light goes. I think it's called light pollution is less with these. And there's a significant cost savings as far as the energy costs go. And so we'll be working with Carrie and with Andy in the future, potentially get those fixtures replaced. There's a little over 1,000 fixtures that we have in the city. I think 227 is the number that jumps out to me that we've replaced. And so we have a little over 800 left to be replaced if we're going to do that. And so I want to thank Mr. Selhertz and also Mr. Wilson for working on this project, as he kept calling it, he's from our friends to the north there in Canada. And then secondly, we had an update from Bowen in regards to the City Hall, and gave some updates on the timeline of how the budget is going forward, and then when the project's supposed to get started. And so we'll see some numbers regarding that budget at our next meeting on June the 14th, and hopefully having that go through readings and pass that with a slated start date sometime later in the summer for the parking lot, and then in the fall for the actual City Hall itself. There are a couple of details from the outside we're still ironing out, but I think we're making good progress on that. And then Bowen will come back here in the next, I would imagine, the next several weeks to, or at least the next several meetings to present what it's going to look like on the inside. So a very productive committee of the whole meeting. They do meet just prior to council meeting, and all are welcome to attend. And again, the next one will be in person. That is all for committees, reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We'll now move on to reports of council. And we start this evening with Mrs. Ryan Shockey.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone who came out to our first official cleanup of this season. We cleaned along Ridge, Northcliffe, and a little bit of Idlewood over in that area. We typically pick the locations based on the city's parks and also main roads where you have a Welcome to Brooklyn sign. That way visitors and residents alike are welcome to a cleaner city. It's impossible to stay on top of it. As my husband noted, someone threw trash out the window as they saw him picking up. And, you know, the wind blows everything around. But also thanks to council persons Selhertz and Tansky, who did the highway exits once again. So again, it's nearly impossible to keep up on it, but the cleanups both get residents involved and, you know, make a little bit of a difference, and hopefully people see us and, you know, are a little more aware about the trash that they throw out the windows or leave on the sidewalks. Our next cleanup is in combination with the Big Creeks Connect on Saturday, June 5th. It's an annual event. For those that want to register through the Keep Brooklyn Beautiful, you can do so at volunteer.kab.org, or you can show up the meeting station, or meeting this time is behind the fire station on Memphis at 9 a.m. And for those that are wary, I know sometimes Andy and I get people who reach out via email. They don't want to officially register. The registration, you only receive emails as a reminder coming up to the cleanup, and then as a thank you at the end. So you get 2 emails unless you specifically sign up for their emails. But you can always reach out to Andy or myself to sign up as well, or just come on out. And that ends my report. Ron, you're muted still.
Oh, thanks. I was asked you a question and you can't, well, I don't understand why you can't hear me. Is there any way that, are we able to clean up on the highways, or does that have to be ODOT? Is that a John question, or, cause the highways along those walls get really bad.
Andy, do you have an answer?
Or Andy or somebody, yeah.
It's actually ODOT. We're trying to work with, there's an ROTC group from Rhodes High School. They're through an Adopt a Highway program. They're supposed to clean it 4 times a year, but with Rhodes being part of Cleveland Metropolitan School District, they've been on COVID restrictions. So we've been talking with the staff, a master sergeant, trying to get it done through the mayor. When we saw it in the springtime when it got nasty, there's an outside firm, a third party that works for ODOT. I talked to the one ODOT director and he had them out the next day cleaning up the stuff. So when the first snow or the snows melt, I mean, you see everything. So yeah, it's really ugly. With the ramps, we kind of go on ourselves and try to do them about every other week. So the last couple times it's gotten better, but the first times it's just plain ugly once the snow melts.
So
and
are we?
And also they mentioned that ODOT was on COVID restrictions too. So they were getting hundreds and hundreds of phone calls from cities after that snow broke because the highways were terrible everywhere. And technically, we are not supposed to be out there on the highway.
That's what I was going to ask. Are we even allowed to be out there?
We shouldn't be. No.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's kind of what I thought. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Ranchaki. All right. Andy, you're up next. So go ahead, sir.
All right. And yet when we're talking about being on the highways, we just try to stay on the ramps. So it's like the initial appearance going on or in or out of the city. So we're definitely not going into the high speed stuff, but yeah, thank you. Good evening. This past Thursday was the first food giveaway that was done at the high school. 25 people signed up for it. The program's done through the Hunger Network in Cuyahoga County. The next pickup is scheduled for Thursday, June 17th between 2 and 4 p.m. You need to pre-register 2 weeks prior to it. The boxes that you get are 24 pounds and contain both produce and dairy. This past Saturday was the Safe Routes to Schools Bike Rodeo. Thank you to all those that helped in putting the event together and those that attended. With the staggered starting time periods, it might not have seemed to have been as big of a crowd as prior years, but it was still a really nice event. It was just a step in the right direction, getting back to things as they were. Hats off, congratulations to Jenna Young from Brooklyn High School. Jenna's heading to the state finals for the 100-meter hurdles and the high jump. As Meg mentioned, with Keep Brooklyn Beautiful, if you need service hours for graduation this year, next year, please consider us. Bubba's Yard is going to have their produce giveaway tomorrow at the St. Elias Church on Memphis Avenue in a parking lot. It officially starts at 3:30, but people are there earlier. Once they're up and ready and running, they'll try to get you in and out of there as quick as possible. And then thank you to Nick Maroulis and his dad, Angelo Maroulis, in helping to get the wall at Arby's power washed and primed for the Brooklyn High School murals class. Students were out there again today, this afternoon, working on the wall, and we'll be again out there this Thursday from about 12:15 to 2:30 or so. Also, I want to give a thanks to Mr. Verba and especially Ray Mass from the service department in getting us set up with a little bit more powerful power washer that saved us time in this project. And as Ron mentioned, thanks to Kerry Wilson from Realtor and Energy, kind of giving us a final audit report explanation. And maybe we can talk about all this and try to get in the right direction and get all this where we can try to save some money for the city. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Selhurst. Next up, Mrs. Pucci.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what Ms. Ryan-Shockey mentioned about the Big Creek watershed cleanup. As she said, it is this Saturday, June 5th from 9 to 12 noon. Now, the initial announcement did say masks required. I'm not sure if that's going to change or not, but they do ask, because you do go down into the woods, that you wear long sleeves, pants, boots. Work shoes are recommended. Bags and work gloves will be provided, and children under 18 must have adult supervision. Last meeting, I shared some information on our recycling project where we're trying to reduce the contamination in our curbside recycling stream. Hopefully by now, everyone would have received this oversized postcard. They started being delivered last week. And I would ask people, residents, to please read it very carefully, to keep it handy, and to please refer to it when you're recycling. The success of the project, but ultimately the success of trying to hold down costs to the city, is if we could reduce the level of contamination. And I think when residents read this, some may be really surprised that right now we are very limited in what we are able to recycle. And as I mentioned previously, when people try and recycle other things, that's what causes the contamination. And that is one of the big issues that has caused increase in recycling costs and problems operationally, both for cities and also the materials recycling handling facilities. So please hang on to it, refer to it, and hopefully we'll be able to reduce the contamination. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Mr. John Verba, our service director, for all his help on this project. It's been invaluable. I did attend the last Planning Commission meeting, and unfortunately, I'm not able to attend the meeting on Wednesday, June 2nd, because I'm working. The Planning Commission members already are aware that I'm not in favor of the conditional use application for the car wash at Ridge and Bidoff. I would like to thank Mr. Rowan for pointing out that section 1129.01 sets out the criteria that the Planning Commission must find when they grant a conditional use. There are 10 points that they have to examine carefully. And I do understand the concept of having some authority and also some leverage when we're looking at a conditional use versus a permitted use. However, in my opinion, I just don't believe a car wash is appropriate for that area. I did elaborate these concerns at the meeting. I won't be redundant. Something else that I'm not sure was mentioned is basically, the car wash wants to be successful. So, basically cars are lined up with their motors running on the property as they, line up and then eventually go through the car wash. And that's just one additional aspect that I think the Planning Commission should look at, both with noise and exhaust fumes. And that's in addition to everything else I mentioned at the previous meeting. As Mr. Van Kirk mentioned, we are going to go back to meeting in person. And I, for one, am really looking forward to getting back to a normal, way of meeting. While the technology is great, there are some challenges. And I also don't believe I think you lose something when you're online. And I think we also don't have as many residents who are able to participate. I'd like to thank Chief Milkey. I had received numerous complaints about the speeding and loud racing motorcycles. And Chief, would you mind just giving just a very brief synopsis of what you explained to me about the problems that these motorcycles present as they're speeding and racing and making all the noise on 480, but also on some of our main streets?
I'm not quite sure what I know I sent you some numbers, Ms. Pucci, but they do present some problems in catching them. We do our best when we do activate our lights and we have video, we follow up. I think just last week we ended up getting one of our notorious ones that we've been looking for over the last few weeks, that we followed up and caught them over here in the Westbrook. So I can tell you, just because you're hearing it, we are doing our best. We're up there on a regular basis up on 480 and the side streets, looking for these motorcycles. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
So basically, specifically, I was able to share with the residents who had called me the safety issues, which I really didn't realize. You mentioned that sometimes they're just going so fast that it's actually unsafe for our officers to pursue them at that particular point in time.
Right, particularly on 480, it does get rather congested. If our officers feel it's unsafe, they have that ability to not pursue, and we call ahead to the departments in that direction and let them know. We get a good description as best we can and get it out to the officers out there. Also let Ohio State Patrol know about it. But yeah, it really is a safety issue. We don't want to jeopardize any other people on the road or our officers' own injuries.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Mr. Butler for Ordinance 2021-17. And as Mr. Butler mentioned this evening, we are fortunate that our charter affords us the ability to enact this under local control, that we don't have to follow the state statute on this. As Mr. Van Kirk reported in his Finance Committee report, I did raise an issue that I am asking council to take a look at, and I thought this summer would be a good opportunity. We had a shift after a review of the charter, and as Mr. Van Kirk mentioned, we had to start following the state spending threshold, which is $50,000, in lieu of making that decision locally. And then the second issue is our Board of Control, which we are also required to follow the state statute on as far as the makeup and the approval limit. This is not going to be a quick process. We definitely need the expertise and analysis of Mr. Butler, Mr. Raguse, and the mayor's input to ensure that if we got to the point where we were inclined to suggest a change, that there are no unintended consequences, because it is a very complicated issue. I'd also like to thank Mr. Selchertz for his work on the streetlights. I did read through the entire report, and because we ran out of time, I will send my questions by email. And I'd like to thank Mrs. Grodick for her reflection on Memorial Day. And while, unfortunately, we find ourselves back in the same position as last year, where we're not able to have the usual festivities. Hopefully by next year, that'll be very different. But I would ask that our residents take time to remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice to protect our freedoms and our way of life, and also to please keep their families in your thoughts and prayers, because their lives were changed forever. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pucci. Next up, Mrs. Belbier, excuse me.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. I too would like to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day. I'd like to thank all the families who have had members in their family that have served in the forces. I know I come from a military family. I've known so many of my uncles, and my father and even my husband have served in the military. And there's something very special about it. And it's a blessing when you hear young men and women that do join the armed forces. It's so wonderful to hear. And nowadays they offer so many wonderful programs for them after service. And so when I was growing up, it was always called Decoration Day. And I don't know if anyone remembers that, but I remember my mom saying it's Decoration Day. So, and that's kind of like a nice day to remember too. But I'd like to put a little shout out to all those who served. Thank you for your service. But some of the things that are opening up now that COVID is kind of are some of our restrictions, it seems like things are coming alive. All things seem to be made new again. And downtown is coming alive. When I drive downtown, the parks, everything, it's so nice. And I do hope that all that are vaccinated have signed up for the $1 million giveaway, the www.ohiovaxamillion. I mean, let's face it, you have a chance to win $1 million. So you can call 1-833, 4ASKODH, or you can sign on to www.ohiovaxamillion, and you have a chance to win. So the first drawing will take place tonight, May 24th at 7:30, and the winner will be announced on May 26th at 7:30 p.m. This will last for 5 weeks, and the last drawing is on June 21st. So winners will be announced on that following Wednesday. So if you get a chance, make sure you do that, especially those that are vaccinated, a little initiative to get people vaccinated. I'd also like to thank a special thanks to all those who help with food drives everywhere, whether it's at the church and even here in our own city, and especially here at Brooklyn Acres. People that go there, they dedicate their days, their afternoons, distributing food, packing food, and making sure that somebody has a little care package. God bless them for all their endeavors and everything that they do for the homeless or for those that need a little extra food that week. You know, the paycheck doesn't go that far. So I'd like to say thank you to all of them. And that pretty much completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Tansky.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Good evening. We'd like to thank Councilman Andy Stelhertz on doing a great job with the converting of the city streetlights over to LED lighting. There have been numerous broken and burned out lights throughout the city. And with this being a major safety issue for our residents, he has made getting these lights fixed his top priority. I also would like to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, Mrs. Grodick.
Thank you. First, I would like to offer congratulations and best wishes to the class of 2021. I think perseverance and unique are two words that will always describe their senior years. And I hope that wherever life lands, you will always proudly say that you've come from Brooklyn, Ohio. And last, I also am really looking forward to meeting in person next month. While the technology, I think, has offered many learning opportunities, it also was a steep learning curve for all of us. And I'd like to take one more time again to thank the mayor and your staff for all of your careful actions during this pandemic. I know that the decisions weren't easy and they weren't always popular, but they were always made with our well-being in mind. So thank you again. And that concludes my report. And see you next month.
Thank you. Just a couple of ththings. And Mrs. Ridge just talked about it. I do also want to wish everyone congratulations on the class of 2021. Both last year's graduating class and this year's graduating class have certainly had some memorable days. And I'm very grateful that this year's class gets to have a graduation ceremony at Brooklyn. That's incredible. That's awesome. Since Mr. Changary is no longer with us and he can't come out and say, make sure you drive carefully on the streets like he did always during the summertime, I do want to point that out. The weather, summer came early this year. It's been so nice to see the beautiful sunshine out. A lot of kids out playing, so just be careful as you're driving down the streets. And I am glad that the police are looking after these motorcycles. I live very close to Tiedemann, and sometimes it becomes a racing strip. I don't know how any police car would catch them, but I am glad that they're out there looking for them, and hopefully we don't have a tragedy take place with those. I also, since this will be our last regularly scheduled council meeting, at least for the time being on Zoom, I do want to thank Mary Jo and the mayor as well for putting this together. They've done an outstanding job putting all of this together, despite the fact that this is a new technology to many of us, but I think it's worked out well, and it's kept us connected with the residents as much as possible. And I'm very much looking forward to being back in City Hall. But thank you so much, Mayor and Mary Jo, for your hard work on that. And also, I do want to wish Happy Memorial Day to everyone as well that serves in our military, both past and present, and for those that have lost their lives for our freedom. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times today, we're so divided that we forget that there's way more that unifies us than divides us. And that's because of the sacrifices of those that have died for our country. And so, although we can't get together this year for Memorial Day, I do hope that people will take some time to remember those that paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, and very much look forward to next year's Memorial Day festivities here in Brooklyn. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Van Kirk. I have sort of a lengthy agenda because I was going to talk about some of this in the committee as a whole, but it ran a little over. You know, I appreciate the thank you, but really thanks goes to Mary Jo and Dawn Neal for organizing stuff in City Hall. And you, Ron, I think we were one of the first cities to be up and running on a platform, because you came in and took over and helped us with that, even though the platform kind of faded out and we moved over to Zoom. Thank you for the help of allowing us to move so quickly on that. So Memphis Bridge project, you could see it's been kind of partly torn up for a little while. They're working on the utilities right now. A lot of people think that the trees that have been down on that one property is because of that project. It's not. It's because of the Amazon project. But just a little update on this. We've been kind of going back and forth with the county on this Memphis Bridge. They are talking about possibly closing the bridge up to 8 months. So that would obviously impact us greatly. That 8 months really means 12 months because they want to start the project in the fall, which gives it weather months. So, you know, we've had a huge meeting last Friday to discuss this. Our city engineer has been on top of this, giving suggestions, and the businesses in that area are obviously very concerned because it impacts their business. So we've been working those things out. We have a couple of suggestions. The county is going to go back out and re-inspect to see the likelihood of keeping it open, maybe limiting load during that period, but keeping it open to a certain load level. And then talking about grading underneath the Lindale Bridge. So we have numerous things going on. I think what we learned at the table is that one of their outcomes was to cut through the American Greetings property, which is not possible since it's private property at this point. So kind of going back to the drawing board, and hopefully we'll have a good plan from them within the next couple months. But I will keep you updated. Obviously, that would play a huge impact of how things would work out next year, especially considering that we have construction on Ridge Road off the 480 bridge, which will be another nightmare, another in and out of our city. So just the timing overall is terrible, beyond our control, but we're trying to help and solve this as best we can from our end. We'll keep you updated. The other issue is that, you know, we thank you for passing the zoning update last meeting, but we do have to form a committee. McBride Del Clarion is recommended that we have about 10 to 15 people. 3 of those will probably be council members, a couple people from planning commission, and then a couple residents. So if you have any particular suggestions or interested, if you can get back to me by the end of the week, I'd appreciate that. Jeremy's trying to start a meeting and have a unified committee. There will be multiple community presentations. So even if they're not part of it, and then there'll be individual interviews with, say, any council members that are not on that committee. Last meeting, I talked about broadband access and a meeting with the superintendent and the county. We had that meeting. The superintendent was supportive of the broadband access and possibly being an infrastructure place for the county to put in their RFP. The area that is lacking in our community is the south end, which the school building which would be an ideal place to put that infrastructure to allow us to not only expand our broadband in that area, but it will also allow us to be part of giving our residents lower rates, especially those that are, you know, even if they're lower income, and they're just kind of cutting costs, and in that $20 or $30 a month can really make a difference in their budget, bringing down those costs and taking advantage of all this money from the COVID and the American Recovery Act and using it to our advantage and making sure our residents have access to that. Then I'd like to talk about the stream restoration project. As you know, we received the Recreation Trails Program grant. That has been a slow process to get off the ground because the federal budget was delayed. So they were delayed announcing it. That has to go through the EPA and the ODNR, which has been very slow process. So, you know, it's wonderful to get money to help with these projects, but there's always a flip side to that. You're waiting for other people to launch those projects. So I'm not sure when our footbridge will be able to be built. We're hoping this year, but it may be next year. Jack's working on signage. We might be doing a temporary rock path going in and out of Rodone until we could finish up the project with that grant money. I don't want to leave $150,000 on the table with the state. I want to take advantage of that. So we're doing the best we can to work within the process and what's beyond our control. Again, I'd like to say congratulations to the class of 2021. As the mayor, I get invited to the graduation. It's honestly one of my favorite parts of being mayor. I just can see the excitement on the kids' face and just remember being back to that period of time and kind of that next phase in your life, whether going out to working or starting college. It's just such exciting point in their life, and congratulations to them for making it through to this point and all the things ahead. And with that, I want to congratulate one of our very own, Rihanna Varian, who was a Brooklyn graduate a couple years ago. She just graduated at age 19 with her bachelor's from Cleveland State with summa cum laude. She works for us. She was one of the students that came in as part of the chamber intern program, and she still works with us to this day as a part-time law enforcement clerk, and she is terrific. She's one of our best employees, and I can't say enough great things about her. So congratulations to Rihanna again. I know last week the seniors had their first get together outside. I wasn't able to make it, but I heard it was a terrific turnout. Over 75 of our seniors were there. They were so excited to be there. Karen said it just went so wonderfully. So I am excited to announce that the Senior Center will be officially open as of June 14th, and we will get that out through the robocalls to the seniors. They are going to start with the resident seniors first and give it a few weeks, make sure we work out all of our kinks, and then open it up to our non-resident seniors. They have a huge list of events going on this summer, a lot of outside events too. And so hopefully the seniors that maybe are not comfortable with going to the inside things get to go to the outside events. So keep updated with that. Karen's been getting out individual flyers to seniors. In addition, our next newsletter has a ton of that information coming out as well. Also today I met with Tracy Strobel, the executive director of the Cuyahoga County Library. And we talked about kind of the next steps with this process. I know the last time that we've met was during our work session. They're very excited about this project and continuing to move along. The hope is that we can kind of have a quick turnaround as we don't demolish this current building. They can be set to move forward with the next. So they're going to be talking internally. We've given them the demolition plans and kind of maybe have someone from the ground up on this project to start with planning. Then we can kind of talk about the legals, because if you look at this particular parcel, it's one huge parcel. Some little things we might have to look at are the plane and moving it. They've said that they can work around it, but these are just small things that we'll be working on the whole time. And they're, again, very excited about this project, and I'm very excited about moving forward. So I'll keep you updated if there's anything else to report there. For the public's purposes, I already sent this to City Council. Northeast Regional Sewer District had a rate update. Originally, they were looking at about 9% annually. They were able to get that down to 4.2%, but we will see an increase in our utilities for regional sewer for 4.2% annually for 5 years. So be prepared for that. I know that I already mentioned the water department was going to be the same this year, but likely looking for an increase next year. So all these costs keep going up, unfortunately. And then my last item is I'd like to thank the VFW 469. Later this week, they'll be putting wreaths at Knights Commons, Brock, and Memorial Park, despite the fact that we're not having a Memorial Day parade. I look forward to next year when we can resume this. We'll probably relaunch the video that we put together last year, which I think was absolutely terrific. But most importantly, I just want to thank those families who lost somebody, and I just want to thank them for their service, and just know that you're in my prayers. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor. We just have one director's report this evening. That's our Finance Director, Mr. Raguse.
Mr. Van Kirk, may I ask a question of the mayor, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor, regarding the Memphis Avenue Bridge, do we have any sense of, if they do move forward with closing it, how we would handle any call for service of our safety forces down at that edge of the city?
Yes. So IRG has said that we could cut through their property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raguse.
Good evening. Yes, just one item to report tonight. Just my financial report through April. For the general fund, overall revenues are 45% of the estimated amount and 15% more. As detailed in my memo, it's related due to the income taxes. And I outlined the reasons why within the income taxes. On the bottom half of the income statement with the commitments, overall commitments are 46% of the estimated amount and 19% more than April of last year. The two main reasons for that, extra payroll in April. So we had a third payroll in April as compared to 2 in April of last year. So that'll even out in May. And also the last item, due to the timing of the encumbrances related to medical and dental insurance. Overall, the general fund unencumbered balance decreased by approximately $160,000 to an estimated amount or estimated balance of $16.2 million. As I have for the past 13 months, I've included a estimated loss due to COVID-19. Just a couple highlights within that. A gross estimated loss during the COVID time period of $2.3 million. Net loss, taking into account any subsidies and revenue assistance that we received, overall estimated loss of $1.3 million. How it relates to the general fund overall loss, gross loss of $2.1 million, and a general fund net estimated loss of $1.1 million. We've also received our RETA distribution for May. Our distribution is $684,000 more than May of last year. Excluding the one-time revenue as we received this month, overall is $171,000 more than last year. Within this withholding, our largest revenue source within income tax increased by $55,000 compared to last year for an increase of 5%. So positive news overall there. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions from City Council? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Goose. Appreciate that. All right, we'll now move on with legislation. The first item is a notification. I'm going to make a motion that we amend the agenda to include this notification. For the record, this came in late today. So I'll make a motion that we amend the agenda to add the $50,000 community supplemental grant for the citywide exterior home repair program to our agenda this evening.
Second.
To amend the agenda, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki, Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belvier,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. So, as a notification, we received the $50,000 grant for the home repair and bathroom addition program. This is a matching grant. The city will match this for a total of $100,000, and this has been a very popular project in the past. And looking forward to these funds being used to help individuals with their properties this year. So we're grateful for that. Next up is Resolution 2021-17 is up for third reading and adoption, authorizing the mayor to enter into a pass-through and sale purchase and development agreement with the Cuyahoga County Land Reutilization Corporation for the purchase of certain real property known as Apple Creek Drive, permanent parcel number 431-17116, and declaring an emergency. Are there any comments or questions on this?
To adopt.
Second.
To adopt, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belvier,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Resolution 2021-18 is up for third reading and adoption, authorizing the mayor to enter into a community recreation conservation project pass-through agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Any comments or questions on this? Okay, make a motion that we adopt.
Second.
To adopt, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belvier,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we hold Ordinance 2021-14 in abeyance until our June 14th meeting.
Second.
To hold in abeyance to the following council meeting, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belvier,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
On second reading this evening, Ordinance 2021-15, enacting Section 135.07 Audit Committee of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Brooklyn in order to codify prior legislation creating that committee. Under new business this evening, the first item is Resolution 2021-21, adopting the tax budget for the fiscal year 2022. On first reading, but hope to pass by suspension of the rules, is Resolution 2021-22, authorizing a community cost sharing agreement with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Are there any comments or questions regarding this?
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belbeer,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
To adopt, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belbeer,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-17 is on first reading, amending Section 105.03 definitions of the codified ordinances of the City of Brooklyn. And then lastly is Ordinance 2021-18 on first reading, providing for the issuance and sale of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $25 million for the purpose of paying costs of constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new municipal building to house governmental operations of the city, including, but not limited to, City Hall and the police station, and clearing and improving the site therefore, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto. I'm sure I said that word wrong. I am going to read the fiscal certificate this evening as well, since we have to read it at least one time during this process. So here we go. Fiscal Officer Certificate Municipal Building Project to the Council of the City of Brooklyn, Ohio. As Fiscal Officer of the City of Brooklyn, Ohio, I certify in connection with your proposed issue of bonds in the maximum principal amount of $25 million, the bonds for the purpose of paying costs of constructing, furnishing, and equipping a new municipal building to house governmental operations of the city, included but not limited to City Hall and the police station, and clearing and improving the site therefore, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, the improvement that, number one, the estimated life or period of usefulness of the improvement is at least 5 years. 2, the maximum security of the bonds, calculated in accordance with Section 133.20 of the revised code, is 25 years, being my estimate of the life or period of usefulness of that improvement. If and to the extent a portion of the proceeds of the bonds may be determined to be allocated to a class or classes having a maximum maturity of less than 25 years or in excess of 5 years, the maximum maturity of the bonds would still be at least 25 years by reason of a sufficient portion of the proceeds of the bonds allocated to a class or classes having a maximum maturity or an estimated period of usefulness in excess of 25 years, is dated May 24th, 2021, signed by Director of Finance, Tom Greer, City of Brooklyn, Ohio. And that is on first reading, and the last time I'll read that. All right, that is all we have for our agenda this evening. Does anyone else on council, the mayor, or any of the directors have anything to add? Okay, just as one final reminder, our next meeting will be held on June the 14th at City Hall at 7 p.m. and all are welcome to attend. I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, Ron Van Kirk,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Mary Belbeer,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky,
Yes.
Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you June 14th. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Have a good evening, everyone.